think about this being used is to be like movie dot actors, and this is passing through a connection. And remember, we think of the methods as like questions that we're asking. So basically, of the object. So basically saying, hey, movie, actor. Like, I guess we have to fill in the blanks here. Actors. Hey, movie, actors. But really, it's like, hey, movie, what are the related actors? Who are the actors that played in this movie? Right? Another way of, we have self here. So again, we can think of like input and output. So what's the output that we want? The output should be like a list of actor objects. Right? So I'm like, again, these are all techniques I'm leaning on to break down the problem. Given this input of an instance, we don't call it like that, but you can see it takes an instance and a connection to the database. How do I find the related actors? Okay? So who are the actors that played in this movie? In order to answer this question, you really have to already have an understanding of the schema. Like, how do movies and actors relate? So you can think about it, right? Like, you could just, one way to do that is like, think about the domain. So a movie has many actors. And then what about actor? An actor has many movies, right? So even without looking at the schema, we should be able to figure out that these things probably relate through like a join table. Okay? So that would be like my movie, in this case, I think it's the movie actor table, or movie actors. Let's see, movie actors. Okay, and then again, like I would confirm that maybe by going to the schema. So if we look at the migrations, this has a create tables, and you can see there, okay, we have this movie ID and the actor ID, and that's what links these two things up. Okay? So again, the problem is, given a movie, right here's the input. The input is self. We know that we just have to look up to see what class we're in to figure out what self is going to be. So self is a movie instance. So given an instance of a movie, an example movie, who are the actors? All right, what's the next thing we can do? Again, we can start at the bottom. Start at the bottom. Okay, like you can try it all in one go, but if that breaks, I wouldn't just keep hacking away. Like, right, we want to like build understanding. And I think like simplifying the problem by just, instead of working with Python and SQL, but just work with one thing at a time. So let's start at the bottom. So this problem is, given a movie, who are the actors? So we can hopefully log into my development database. So PSQL-D, I think it's IMDb movies. All right, and now let's see the tables. So I'm just looking again. And what is, like, given a movie, find the actors. I'm going to just start with a single table. So for instance, let's just look at the data. Select all from movie actors, right? Limit 2, right? So here's a movie ID. Here's the actor. So now we have an example. Given a movie, we can even look at it. Select all from movies where movie.id equals 1. Ah, that's annoying. I guess I didn't load it in there. That's very disappointing. Maybe it didn't. Let's just select. So now this looks like a bug. So what's the next thing? The next question I have is, potentially, my first thought was, okay, well, I guess there's no movies in there. But actually, maybe there's just no movies with ID equal 1. So this is the next step is like, do I have this? And this might be, give me back. Let's do limit 10. Do I have any movies? And we do not. Okay, so let's fix this. All right, so now I think what I have to do is go into the data folder. And I know the directions tell me how to do it. Sorry. It's that copy command. Let's do just JupyterLab for now. I think when I loaded it, there was an error. Yeah. See, I had an error. Somehow I got some sort of error here. I wonder why. So let's do PSQL-D Foursquare development. And then let's copy it. Am I in the data? Yeah. Relation movies does not exist. That's weird. Okay, that's weird too. Oh, it's IMDb. I'm sorry, guys. I'm confusing myself. Yeah, -D, IMDb movies. Let's do -T. There's my movies table. Let's just make sure, select all from movies, limit to. There are no movies. Now let's try the copy movies. Let's see how we do. Oh, that seemed to have worked. Now let's see if we did that. So let's just press up a couple times. There's our movies. And now let's try select all from movies, limit 1. Cool. Okay, so we got our movies, Women Art Revolution. So let's see the related actors. I think that's the question we're working on, right? Given a movie, who are the actors? So the first thing I can do is just work with a single table, right? And that's my limit table. So select all from movie actors, right? Limit 1. And this is the link, right? So if I want to find kind of all the actors, or like kind of a representation of all the actors that were in this movie, what would that be? Well, let's select all from movie actors where movie ID, and I'll just use the table prefix, movie actors dot movie ID equals 1 semicolon. And these are all the actors. So I already feel better, right? There's already some like relief. So we can just copy and paste this into here. Okay. And now we want to like go to the next step, which what do we actually want? Again, we can look at what we wrote down. Given a connection, who, and we also know self. I'll just put self here. Who are all the actors that played in this movie? So we want like movie instances. We want actor instances. Okay, this is what we want to get to. So if I want to get to there, then the next thing I need to do is get this actor information. So that's the next thing. Select all from movie actors, join actors on, how do I do it? Actors.id equals movie actors dot actor ID. And now that must have made a mistake. Select all from movie actors, join actors on actors.id equals movie actors. Oh, I don't need where. Well, yeah, where the movie is 1. Unless these actors are not there. I mean, that was the next thing I would look at. Let's look at the actor ID of 1. Select all from actors where ID equals 1. Uh-oh, that's not good. How about 1339? Okay, well, this is starting to answer my question. So maybe I just didn't load this into there. Let's look at somebody, an actor. Select all from actors. Limit 2. Oh, we don't have any actors in my table. Look, that's answering that. I swore I did this, but I must not have. IMDb movies, and then let's copy the next thing. I think it broke maybe when I tried to do it earlier. Okay, copy actors. Okay, and now let's try my previous thing. So that was this. We want to find, can I get the movie actor, actually get the actors. So join, now that we have these movie actors, where the movie ID is 1, can we join the actors where the actor's ID is the movie actors.actor ID? Right, let's see if that works. That's doing a good job, right? So we started without the join, select all from movie actors or the movie actors.movie ID. We started just with this, and then we said, okay, next we want to join, actually get some of the actor information. Okay. And now we don't want actually all of this. Like what we want to display is just information about the actors. So that's actors.star. And that seems like the right answer. Okay. So now we can move this. We can literally just copy and paste it. So why is this good? Like why is this approach like useful? Not only we're doing a couple things. Let me finish. So one, we're isolating what can go wrong, right? So I made how many mistakes? A lot, right? Along the way. But while I'm doing it, it's like, where could the problem be? It's only in SQL, right? I'm not working with 3 different layers at once, just SQL. Even with when I'm doing SQL, I'm still breaking things down. First, make this query as simple as possible while kind of answering my question. So just use one table. Now that I joined it, we made a mistake, right? And then finally we got that working. Okay, so that's one good thing about it, is like just keep breaking it down because when we break it down, we can really isolate. When things go wrong, we can isolate what the issue is. Then the second reason why this is useful is we get like such a quick feedback loop, right? It's kind of very direct and immediate. Like I try one query, it doesn't work, make a variation on it, try it again, right? And like really can kind of see the result and then update it. So that's very, very useful, obviously, with programming. And then finally, when I got it, I just copy and paste it, and now I'm ready to move into Python. And this is my query. And we can here's my connection. And now I'm purposely going to make a mistake. Let's do this. All right, and now let's run the test. And we'll run the test. Let's see if I won't even hit this. Well, let's do this. Yeah, connection task. We'll hit the breakpoint. So we'll run the PyTest. That's not fun. Oh, that's because I'm in the data folder. So for me to be able to run PyTest, it has to see a test folder, and then once it sees the test folder, it should see, this stuff. So now let's run PyTest again. Okay, so we have some fails. We finally broke right here. We hit our breakpoint. So there must be some test. You can see it. Test movie.py, 2 dots, right? So we're probably in the 3rd test of test movie.py. So I just did command click to get there. And now here's my test. 1, 2, 3. Movie.actors, right? Passing through the test connection, right? Which is kind of creating. We know that because of this movie thing, we're creating this stuff. This is my data. So the 2 movies, the actor, and the connection between Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, both with Shawshank. And the movie I'm yielding is Shawshank, right? So we should get back 1, 2, 3. We should get back these 2 actors. Okay, and now we're in this, and we're about to call this next line. We're right here, line 17. We're about to call this line. If we just copy and paste it, it breaks. So it says connection object has no attribute execute. So we're not going to fix the library, so we must be using it wrong, right? This doesn't have a method called execute because it just doesn't. So we could Google this, we could say, probably put this perhaps into Stack Overflow. And it says you should use the cursor object to execute the query, right? And that sounds like a good idea. So so obviously this is, you can kind of think through, like, when you see these generic errors, it is very possible that other people have gotten them. So let's fix that. So what do we need to do? We have to take the connection, create a cursor from it, do cursor equals this new cursor that we created. This is telling me right here that this is gray, is that we're not using this when we should be. So we do cursor.execute, cursor.fetchAll. So just to review, for executing a query, you use a cursor. The only time we really use a connection is when we do a commit, is if we insert in data and then we have to do connection.commit, or if we delete data and then we have to do connection.commit. Otherwise, to make a query, you just do cursor. Okay, so we do this, we do cursor.fetchAll. That looks like a good point to verify if we're getting the right kind of data. So let's exit out of here and run this again. And we hit a breakpoint. Oh, you know what? Well, I guess I can show you this. This is an annoying bug. If I do cursor.fetchAll, it looks like this query didn't work. Really what happened is, you can think of like when you perform the query, I forget the exact, it's like you load a queue and then you release or like pop the stash, whatever. So once you call fetch all here, it's like release the data. So if you call it again, you're not going to see that data. That's what's happening here. So this is kind of an annoying output that we'll see. So what we can do instead is assign the result to a variable, and then instead of calling cursor.fetchAll again, we can just view the records. So run it again. Notice how, like, again, speaking of quick feedback loops, you can see why tests are so useful. It's like, make a mistake, just run the tests. Make a mistake, just rerun the tests. All right, so here we are. Here's records, and that breaks. Damn it. Okay, so why is this breaking? Okay, well this is, oh, I know why. Look at this, where the movie ID equals 1. Well, I don't want this anymore, right? Let's think about this. What do we have to work with again? Right, we have our database, and we have self. So, and like go back to the goal, right? Who are the actors that played in this movie? So we want to find the actors where, let's take a look at this movie, where it's ID of 33, right? Where the movie, in other words, where it's self.id. So we're going to have to update this. But for now, if we want, we could just check it. And maybe we can. Yeah, it's not so easy. We'll just run the test again. So we'll update this to do the %s. And now we'll do cursor.execute query self.id, comma. Right? We need the comma because we need this to be a tuple. And now we'll do records.fetchAll, and then we'll try it again. And we'll hit our breakpoint again. Okay, now let's take a look. But like when I hit the bug, like notice that I've already eliminated a lot of what could be going wrong, because like, you know, we got no result, but I know this query works. But then I remember, okay, well, it's just the fact that in testing I have a totally different data set, right, than I had in development. So what can be going wrong? So maybe, so then you kind of look and you're like, okay, well, I guess maybe this ID does not exist in my test database, right? And then you're like, okay, well, I'm implementing this wrong, because this code should still work in testing, so we forgot, right, to make it dynamic. All right, so now let's take a look at the records. And that's beautiful, right? This is exactly what we want. And the next thing we need to do is go through each of these. It's like this is our new input, in other words. Like, this is our new problem now. Starting with this data, how do we turn it into an instance? Okay? So let's show another issue that we saw, which was, okay, we're importing build from record, and this takes a class. So what should the class be, right? You're wanting to return an actor. So we'll do models.actor, and we'll pass through records, and let's call these my actors. And then let's just put a breakpoint. Actually, we'll put a breakpoint right here, and then we'll call this. Okay, so now we think we're about to find glory. So let's run this. Oh, that was not what I expected. I did not expect that to work. Let's find out what happened. Okay, let's see if this has worked. Yeah, it broke, good. Okay, so this was not good. All right, so what happened here? What happened here is we should look at this build from record thing. So build from record takes a class. That part I think we did a good job in. That's the class. And it takes a single record, right? And you can, this is why, like, kind of understanding what happens here. I mean, if we want to, we could break this down further, right? By kind of like putting a breakpoint here. Maybe that's the best thing. It's like this is returning a weird thing. So let's see why it's doing that. So let's run this again. Again, like what I'm doing is if you can't figure out why this is breaking, the beautiful thing is that you can put a breakpoint where it's breaking and then have the code tell you what's going on by running this again. Oh, you know what's annoying is that this is kind of dangerous, actually. Or it's not dangerous, but one thing that's kind of annoying here is that every time build from record is called in my tests, we're going to hit this breakpoint, right? So for instance, when I call like test actor, this calls say and say we call actors.movies, then actors.movies at the end is gonna like take the data from the database and call build from record. So every time we call for build from record, it's gonna hit this breakpoint. So one thing we can do to make this a little bit more efficient, because we only care about the time that it happens here, is let's exit out of this, and we'll do PyTest, and then let's just only call this one file. Oh, sorry, not that one. Tests, models, test actor. Okay, so we just want to call this one file, and we know the first one we can skip if there is anything. The second one we can skip. I don't even know if we'll hit any breakpoints here. And then we'll get to the third one, and then I'll call actor.movies, and then we'll get to the actor file. Oh, sorry. We want movie.actors. So we want to call test movie.py. So if we go to testmovie.py, maybe this will return a build from record, each one of these. So we're just going to have to be careful. And one way maybe to be careful is we can put a breakpoint right here. So we'll see when we hit this breakpoint, and then we'll see when we finally get into actors, like the next time, that's when we'll be at the right breakpoint. And this sometimes you just have to do this. So this time we hit build from record before we got to this breakpoint. So let's press continue. Again, we got there before hitting that breakpoint. Let's press continue. Again, we got to build from record before hitting this breakpoint. Continue. This is life. This just happens. Continue. We're good. Continue. We're okay. Okay, finally. We're about to hit, you see this? Actors equals movie.actors. We're right here. We're about to call movie.actors. At this point, then we're going to get into actors. We're going to call build from record, and then that will hit our breakpoint right here. Okay, so we're about to be in the one that causes our bug. So now I'll do continue to get to this code. Okay, this is what we want to look at. So what can we look at that's useful? We can start at the beginning. Class, this is the actor class. That's good. API.models.actor, actor. So this is saying in the API folder, the models folder after that, the actor file, there's a class called actor that we're passing through. And then we have the record. Okay, this is feels wrong that we have something that's a single name and we're passing through two things. Let's see what happens next. We'll do this. What's attribute? Already this is off. So why is this off? So we're zipping together the class.columns, let's take a look, and the record, where the record is the tuple. So we're pairing this tuple with this and this tuple with that. Okay, so now maybe we can start to understand what's going wrong, right? We only want to pass through one of these and zip one of these things together with each of these attributes. So, right, we have two options. I guess what we can do is, instead of we want to just pass through one record at a time, so we can go back to our movie actors, and say, okay, for record in records, right, call the build from record, and pass through the single record, and this will be my list of actors. So this time, right, each record should just be the tuple. Should just be one of these tuples, and that's what I'll zip up, right? That's what we'll zip together. Okay. I mean, you could even, you could even try it. You could even say, okay, let's just take record square bracket 0 and make this like the record, and then just double check that if I do that and then I pair this, then now it looks good, right? And it does. Okay, so I just tried on the console first. It looks good. Now we're ready to make the change in the real code, or feel good about, we know what's going on. And then again, we can like put a breakpoint here and remove our breakpoint from here, which we did, and then run the test again. Okay, so now if we look, so we hit our breakpoint. This is in this test of movie. Here's actors. We're about to go into the next breakpoint of calling movie.actors. Hit the breakpoint here. So do continue. Now we're in this breakpoint, movie.py line 20. So we're right here, and we're going to check what actors is. Actors looks pretty good. Let's look at the first one. Dot Dunderdicht. Tim Robbins. Let's look at the second one. Should be Morgan. And it is. So nice. Let's see the questions. Oh, why not use build from records? Yeah, we should. Right? Like, so it turns out we already have this method. A method to take a list of records. You can kind of see it. If you go to the ORM or the D, is it right here? You can see that this is what this is doing, is taking a list of records, going through each record, calling build from record on it. So that's effectively what we were doing, taking the list of records, going through each one, calling build from record. So we should just call build from records. But it's not imported. You can see that, right? Like, you can see it's not giving me the tab completion for build from records. So we're going to have to import it. And then we can pass through and I'm looking at the signature of the method, right? The signature is the definition as well as the arguments you pass through. So this is models dot, what do I want to return? An actor, right? With the list of records, right? And this is my actors. And then we can just return it. Or you could just return this directly. Okay. Then you run the tests, and hopefully you have one more passing test than when you started. Ugh, and I forgot, did I forget a breakpoint? Where is it? Oh, you know what? This is breaking in my test. So let's remove this and just press continue. Okay, we have 3 passed, 1 failed. Movie has no attribute to JSON. So it looks like we were successful in these 3. And we just need to fix this one, which I'll let you all do. All right. So, yeah. I mean, why go through all this, right? It feels like you kind of already went through this when you did the ORM lab. Again, it's like, just follow the process. Okay, we have an input. What's the output? What are we asking for to begin with, right? Okay, if I would need to know how a movie relates to actors, we have to go back, look at the schema, make sure we understand that. Then let's, keep it simple. I can go right into the database, give myself a movie, and perform a query to find all the actors. From there, right, we even broke that down by just using the join table and just selecting on that. And then from there, joining the actors table next. So remember we did like select from movie actors, right, where the movie ID is something, got that result, and then build from there. Then finally we got like the end result we wanted. Still hard-coded this data, tried it out. It broke, right? And we started to say, okay, well, we should not have been hard-coding this anymore. But like we built an understanding of the problem over time, and we built up confidence that we were doing things correctly. So as we ran into bugs, right, we were really able to like isolate what was breaking, like what was even potentially breaking. Okay, so we didn't just like start like, because lots of times when you're really waiting and you don't know what's going on, you'll just like scratch stuff that's pretty good, So anyway, building this stuff up slowly really helps us. And then like whenever we couldn't figure out what was going on, like maybe this build from record thing, we just put a breakpoint like in the actual part, and then we can have the code. If we put the breakpoint here, we can have the code essentially tell me what's going on, what the problem is, by walking through each of these steps. And then the other thing we did was when we hit that issue of like connection.execute, right, we just Googled it. Because this is using a library, and like we saw an error message, and we just plugged that error message into Stack Overflow and saw if it was helpful, and it was pretty helpful, right? So those are all like techniques, right? And again, you have time to move through this. So I would much prefer you kind of like at least a couple times try, if it's just to please me, like try the slow process oriented thing, and then you can always, when you do it properly a couple times, you can always move away from it, and then you'll have it to come back to, when you're if when you get stuck, right? But building that in as a habit is really useful. And like kind of like I said, like that's the difference I've seen between like junior and more experienced developers is when more experienced developers get stuck, they know how to get unstuck by breaking down the problem, right? Whereas junior developers just stay kind of stuck. All right. Cool. Questions? Hopefully this won't be helpful if you don't try it yourself, by the way. Like you'll just forget it. You have to build this skill. All right.
I have a question,
Yeah, go ahead.
but not this stuff. But I don't know. I make it right, everything working fine. But when I started yesterday, I have a problem with the settings.py. I don't know if someone else has it. I solved it, but the thing is, I don't understand why is it not working what I want to work it. Like for example, the settings.py. If I use in db.lib, where is your db.py? If you import from there settings, it don't work.
Let me think
Uh,
about this. So you're saying from settings, import.
yeah,
It could be an issue with where settings is located. So my settings are here, are on the outside. And just remember that throughout the whole code base, you're taking the perspective of whatever kicks off the code. So you're in when you run PyTest, or if you type ls here, this is the test directory, right? The test directory is right here. So we'll run PyTest from back end. Where's settings? Settings is one level in. So it makes sense that this file says from settings import db, go directly, in other words, from this backend folder to find the settings.py. If we move the settings.py into like API, like this will break now because maybe not. Let's see.
no.
Yeah, you see this no
If you
module
run
in settings.
if you run the setting, yeah, this is the error I'm keep getting it. If you even don't move the settings, it will give you the error. Then I figured out I have to put it in the init.py to make it work. I don't know. I don't
You
understand
you
that,
could
but it worked.
you
Were you running db.py interactively?
Yeah, if you run Python 3
uh
db.py, it will say the setting module is not found.
Yeah,
And
it's not designed for that. Like we're not really designed to run this code base isn't designed to just run a single file directly. Like really the way to interact with it is either through the tests or by creating a console.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing, right? And when you run it interactively, then it starts doing it from the perspective of db.py, so you have to change where settings is.
Exactly.
So I think that's just like an easy pitfall to fall into.
yeah,
Yeah.
I put it in then init the init.py and then it start working.
Right. I mean, yeah, so if you move into say I ran this file, this probably won't work anymore. Like if let's go to movie.py models. Sorry, API models. So if I just run movie.py, my guess is, and like try to debug it this way, this isn't breaking. This is going to break, right? So let's think about why. So it's starting here, line 1, and it's saying, hey, you're trying to import from api.lib, but I don't see it. The reason why it doesn't see it is you have to take the perspective of what's kicking off your code. So we're doing Python 3 movie.py. What does movie.py see? So you can go into the folder, which we're in, and you can see movie.py just sees this. So the only way to like see this is if what kicks off our code is outside of API. So for example, tests like can see the API folder, it sees the sibling directory. Run.py does the same thing, right? Run.py will boot up our Flask app, which will, from the controller load a bunch of stuff. But everything's we're starting from this folder now when we do Python 3 run.py. And then we can say from api.lib.db, right? It's all, for Python, it's from the perspective of the folder or the file that's kicking off our process. So if I'm doing Python 3 run.py, then all of a sudden this code right here is correct because run.py, from here we can see API, right? But if I go into API models and now I do Python 3 movie.py, just try to run this directly, it does, like if you type ls, you just don't see the word API, right? This file doesn't see it. It's stashed in a drawer and it's looking around. It doesn't see API. API is on the outside of the drawer. I don't know. That's the way Python works. Yeah, Python path also hopefully can help. I will try to maybe go into that, but using Python path as an option. It is in a reading that you all saw, but we haven't talked about it too much. So we can look at that too. But just know, you can't just run a file and it sees your whole directory, right? It depends on which file is kicking off, right, the process. This is why we structure it. You have to structure your code in a certain way so that this sees, what to get into the code base, run.py, looks at API and kind of goes down. And then same thing with tests. Go to API, right? So you can notice we're always starting with the word API. That's how we're structuring the code base, because we're always kicking off the code from this directory. So you can go to really any file, unless it's outside of, settings is outside of API, that's why that works. But you can go to api.models, api.lib.db, right? We're always starting from there. If you go to the tests, from api.models. So you have to start everything from the same level of backend, from basically out here. Okay? When you run PyTest, you're doing it from the backend folder. When you run.py, you're doing it from the backend folder. If you had a console, you would put it here and run it from the backend folder. That way, from the file's perspective that you're kicking off the code with, it's always going to start the same way. API dot whatever, right? From this folder, from the backend folder. Okay. All right. Yeah, that is confusing. I feel like that takes a while to get used to, but it's just the way Python works.